right, guys, so today in class, you're going to be looking over poetry over nature. Last week, you read the essay, Why Do Leaves Turn Color in the Fall? So this week, we're going to continue with the theme of nature. Now, on the worksheet that the sub gave you, you should have this sheet out in front of you. We're going to be looking at the first page titled Nature Poetry. It's got an example poem over here, and it's got a sound device chart. This page doesn't have any instructions, so I'm going to go ahead and go over this with you right now. So you have 3 poems to read in addition to the example poem that we're going to go over right now. Each of those poems, you're going to do a TP cast, and you're going to record some sound devices that you hear and see within each of those poems. So let's go ahead and look over those sound devices right now. The first one you're going to look for is end rhyme. End rhyme is any words that rhyme at the end of a line of poetry. The example over here is, whose woods these are, I think I know, his house is in the village though. No and though are the words that rhyme at the end of those lines of poetry. So let's go ahead and look at the example poem that I've highlighted in yellow over here. The wind whistled through the trees, saying, winter left just yesterday. Now spring basks in its full display, with hints of summer in the breeze. So you can pause the video and look over this poem and see if you can identify what words rhyme at the end of each line. So if you pause the video, here's a chance for you to go ahead and check your work. The words trees and breeze rhyme, and they are in lines 1 and 4, as well as the words yesterday and display, which is in lines 2 and 3. Okay. The next thing we're going to look at is alliteration, which is the repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of words. The example they give you over here is droning a drowsy syncopated tune. So what you want to look for when you look for examples of alliteration is anytime we have words that start with the same letter again and again in a line of poetry. Like, for example, when I read a story to my daughter at night, there's a slimy swamp monster. The repetition of the S sound is alliteration. So let's look at the example poem. The wind whispered through the trees, saying, winter left us yesterday. Now spring basks in its bold display with hints of summer in the breeze. Okay, so if you want to pause the video right now and take a guess as what lines have alliteration, then you can go ahead and pause it. If you paused it and you want to check your work, the alliteration is wind, whispered, and winter, because each of those words starts with the W sound, with the W repeating at the beginning of each word. That's lines 1 and 2. We also have basks, bold, and breeze. Which is lines 3 and 4. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the last example of sound devices. So the last one they have is onomatopoeia. It says onomatopoeia is any time a word tries to imitate a sound. Like when we say ping or buzz or snarled. So again, it's any word, kind of like when you're reading a comic book and they're like, bam, that would be onomatopoeia. Okay, so let's look over at our example poetry. The wind whispered through the trees, saying, winter left us yesterday. Now spring basks in its bold display with hints of summer in the breeze. So you can go ahead and pause the video if you want to take a guess as to where the onomatopoeia lays. If you're checking your work, this one was a little bit harder because it's not obvious. It's the word whispered in line 1. Okay, so This one, it's a word that represents a sound, but it's not as obvious as when we talked about the examples, because examples are always obvious, and sometimes poets don't use obvious examples because they're trying to achieve a certain effect. So the other thing I want to talk about is that in this poem, the author uses quite a bit of personification. You're not asked to identify the personification in this poem because it's not a sound device. It wasn't, the effect wasn't a sound that you would hear. Personification is anytime a non-human object is given human qualities. So we have the wind whispering, we have winter saying, winter leaving, and spring basking. So those are 3 examples of personification, but they're not sound devices, so we're not going to put them on the chart. But if you notice them, then that's good. It means you're a careful reader. Okay, so I'm going to make another video that goes over the next poem you're supposed to analyze today, titled There Will Come Soft Rains. But when you're reading these poems, you're going to get questions that prompt you to add examples into the sound device chart. This is the chart. Make sure that whenever you see those questions, that you are recording your examples in that chart. Okay. So today I anticipate you to complete at least There Will Come Soft Rains, and hopefully the next poem. Okay. Let me see if I can stop this video.